Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to our March general membership meeting. We have a special treat for you all today. We have civil rights royalty. We have the caregiver of Queen Mother Rosa Parks here, who will be interviewed by her granddaughter, Jasmine Carr, who is our membership committee chair as well as an at-large member. So we're going to go ahead and get through the administrative portion before we move on to the star of the show and get some civil rights information and just bask in the moment of history. So we will start with call to order. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our mission. Fairfax County NAACP is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose mission is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, educational, and economic security of Black people and all people of color. Is anyone from religious affairs here?
I think I have the.
You have, oh yeah, you do have it tonight. Okay, we have Dr. Gershensher, who will be giving us a prayer or inspirational quote. Thank you.
Thank you, President Zimmerman. I feel incredibly honored to have been invited to offer this meditation as we open this evening's meeting. Our faith traditions tell us that we are all created, as is written in Genesis 1:27, B'Tselem Hashem, in the image of God, the divine presence that resides in each of us. The moral and political crisis we are facing today at a very deep level is about denying and extinguishing that divine spark and replacing it with pure power and pure greed. But we know that there have been many more serious moral and political crises in our country's history, beginning even before its founding. And we also know that our current American crisis is but a symptom of the root cause of so many of the previous ones, namely racism. And we know too that those in power, those who seek to preserve their power at all costs, will always seek to divide us by stoking fear and suspicion with false narratives. They cannot be allowed to succeed. The challenges are immense. The sages of my faith tradition teach us that you are not required to complete the work, but neither are you allowed to refrain from it. The prophet Micah tells us what is required of us: to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. These are words to live by. And allow me to conclude with the prophetic words of a man I consider to be one of our modern day sages, the Reverend Dr. William A. Barber. Please, God, grant us wisdom and courage for the facing of this hour, until together we make sure there is racial justice and economic justice and living wage justice and healthcare justice and ecological justice and disability justice and justice for homeless and justice for the poor and low wealth and working poor and immigrant justice, until we study war no more and peace and justice are the way we live. Let us say, Amen.
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 Thank you. Next slide, please. I have nothing to report out except for we have a few events coming up for April. So April 9th at the Gum Springs Community Center, we will be partnering with the Gum Springs Community Center Advisory Board on a senior citizen town hall where they will be discussing the state of our Medicaid, SNAP, and different benefits and things that some of our community members rely on for survival. They have a few board of supervisors who are going to be there speaking on the panel. And there will be several different types of vendors. More to follow for that, but we do have a flyer that will be generating very soon. That is April 9th. We have another event, Black Home Buyers. That will be facilitated by our Housing Committee Chair. And that will be April 26th from 10 to 12:30. More to follow with that. We have a flyer for that that will be coming up. Michelle Leet Scholarship is in June. Some of you who follow us on social media and who receive our newsletter should have seen the Michelle Leet Scholarship. We are giving away 4 scholarships, one for $1,000 and 3 for $500 as runner-ups for the Michelle Leet Scholarship Fund. And we are looking for Black students, seniors, and the information is on our website. And if you go to our website and you look up scholarships, you will see all the information for that. Scholarships are due no later than May 9th. Scholarships are due May 9th. And our HBCU College Day and Career Day will be June 7th. June 7th from 11 to 2 at the Gum Springs Community Center. This is a big deal, ladies and gentlemen. As you all know, we lost our president last year, and this is a way to honor her legacy and her memory. So it would be great if you all can come and support. It'll also be great if you all can pour into the Michelle Leet Scholarship. There are certain things that we're going to want to do for that day, and we need money to do it, i.e. we want to do a stuff the trunk. Stuff the trunk is when you have clothes baskets and you fill them up with things that a college freshman would need, at least to start off. So we're thinking Tide Pods, we're thinking notebooks, maybe a shower curtain, things of that such. So if you're interested, there'll be more to follow with that as well. And I believe that's about it. So we have nothing else. Next slide, please. Secretary's report will be Michael O'Brien.
Good evening, everyone. Wonderful to see so many of you here with us tonight. Just quickly, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the January and February meetings, which were included in the most recent announcement of this meeting that was sent out yesterday. Can I have a motion?
This is Lenore Simmons. I so move.
Can I have a second?
This is Les Shockley. I second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Madam President, you want to ask?
All in favor, I'm sorry, all in favor of approving the minutes for January and February, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Any abstains? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So we will start with our membership committee.
As far as the membership committee goes, and then we have a special guest tonight that will be speaking. So I'm going to just hold our piece of this to let Jasmine handle when we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer.
Good evening, everyone. We just finished going over our first quarter. Each of our accounts are in good standing. We've also closed out our first quarter expenses for the NAACP Fairfax County branch, and we projected our second quarter within our 2025 budget plans accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Budget.
Good evening, everyone. I'll give you a short update. Fairfax County is currently in the midst of the fiscal year 2026 budget process. The new fiscal year starts in July. the county executive issued a 5.7 billion proposed budget, of which the school budget represents 4 billion of the total. Should be mindful that this budget, when it was prepared, did not incorporate the impact of the federal cuts that are taking place currently. So we can anticipate that there will be a greater strain on revenues and a burden on program affordability going forward. At the Board of Supervisors March 18th meeting, the Board of Supervisors members proposed the real estate tax be increased by 1.5 cents over last year's $1.12, 12.5 cents, bringing the total to $1.14. This is not final. The Board of Supervisors will vote on the budget in May. Also, the Board of Supervisors at a meeting earlier this month voted on the introduction of on setting a rate for a proposed food and beverage tax, which has been referred to as a meals tax of 4%. This is another avenue for trying to increase revenues to cover the challenging budget that the county is faced with. That could bring in an additional $65 million. As far as in January, our branch issued an advocacy agenda on items that are very important to us. I spoke with the county executive's office to express concerns about some of those items not being included in the budget, but now is the time for all of us to make our voices heard, as budget town hall meetings have been going on by various supervisors. And I'll put in the chat the remaining meetings, town halls that are still to be held, as they are quickly coming to a close. In April, during 3 days, April 22nd to the 24th, there will be public hearings held by the Board of Supervisors for the public to give input on their budget. And again, those issues for us have to do with the housing, education, which committee heads will go over, and specific initiatives concerning the Public Defender's Office and co-responder program. And very importantly, we've been in support of the collective bargaining agreement that the Fairfax County Schools has been pushing for, which is going to be a big challenge with the environment we are currently experiencing, but our efforts and our alliance is supportive of this. That's it. Thank you very much. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Education.
Good evening, everyone. I'll start just piggybacking after what Les just said. Might as well seg there. We are very much in support of the collective bargaining initiative. That it's a real push that the unions are pushing for. There's an agreement, and we'll see what happens. But as the education co-chair, who's on this call right now, has said, if not now, when, right? But of course, it's a very difficult time. It's a very difficult time to be doing this. And I've heard from people in central office like that they're really just not very happy with, that some people say that they're not happy with with this union push right now because this isn't the time, right? Well, it's really never been the time. So as the argument is being made, we're going to stop being as a community that people want to come join if we don't have our top-notch school system, and if our teachers who are already leaving continue to leave to go to surrounding districts where they are better, better compensation, better perks, better just a better situation, then they will continue to do so. And that will be too late then, by that time. So it's something to really get behind. There's a postcard drive right now. They're planning on delivering a whole bunch, like 1,000 postcards to the doorstep of the Board of Supervisors, just to let them know that the community is behind this and wants this to happen. Marquise, if you're on here, if you have any kind of anything that I don't know if you can add it to the chat. I think you're allowed to add stuff to the chat, and please do. Marquise is our education co-chair. And I saw him that he's already on. So if you see this, go ahead and put something in the chat that could be helpful to the cause. One thing I want to let everybody know is that on May 8th, we are planning to have via Zoom a Black Educators Forum that will be conducted virtually and streamed to our Facebook. And details of that will be coming out soon, but look for that on May 8th. The time of which I have now, it just slipped my mind. I think it's in the evening. Hold on one moment. Black Educator Forum, 6:30 to 8 on May 8th via Zoom. So look for information about that. And there are a lot of different topics, and we're hoping to have this as an ongoing forum that addresses different issues around education, Black educators. So keep a lookout for that. We're also trying to do the next of our State of the Schools for Black students and Black staff event. It's been a little bit hard to get that scheduled, but we'll make sure that you know in plenty of time. That will be an in-person event, and we will let you know about that. That's really all I think I need to say right now.
Thank you. Political action.
Good evening, everyone. As we know, while it is not a national election this year, it is a very important year in that we will be electing our next governor and our House representatives, as well as the lieutenant governor. So we are planning a primary candidate forum prior to the June primary. And we are also planning to write postcards letting Fairfax County citizens know about the upcoming primary, which is as important as any other election that we have. And that concludes my report.
Is there a way that people can volunteer to help do the postcards?
Absolutely. I'm looking for, and I'll find a library, but I'm looking for the date. So I want to reach out to the rest of the committee and see what date works best for them. And then we can certainly share that with all of the members of the chapter or the branch.
Can you put your email in the chat?
Certainly.
If you are interested in a follow-up for this, please email PAC so that you can sign up. She can at least have your name and information, so when they get all the particulars ready, they can reach out to you and you all can help with the postcards and canvassing if there is any to be done. Religious affairs.
Hi, so sorry, I'm just joining. We don't have anything new to report other than please, you can look forward to our May membership meeting, and we've got our Juneteenth devotional event set for June 21st.
Thank you. Scholarship committee, I'm excited. Which one of you are going to just talk our ears off about the Michelle Lee Scholarship?
Well, good evening. This is Daryl Allen. And yeah, we just recently announced the scholarship for Michelle Leet. And the scholarship is going to be one lucky winner is going to win $1,000. And then we're going to have 3 other runner-ups that's going to win $500. And we're going to award that in June at the College Day event. So we just finalized the scholarships and all the details a couple of weeks ago, and we are trying to get the word out. We did connect with somebody from the HBCU Alumni Association, and she actually put it in her newsletter. I'm trying to get it in the newsletter for Fairfax PTA, and I will say that anybody on the call, if you want the PDF of the application for the scholarship, please let me know, and please send it out to many high schoolers as possible. It's for Black students that live and go to school in Fairfax County, and they can go to school either at a private school or a public school. Does anybody have any questions?
I think Miss Lenore has a question.
That's
Yes, ma'am.
correct.
I am wondering if you have submitted it to the Fairfax County uh, database of scholarships that they maintain?
No, ma'am, I have not. Actually, this is the first time of me hearing about a database of scholarships. Do you have like a point of contact or a link that you could put in the chat? And I will definitely share it with them.
Well, if you would put your email in the chat, then I will forward that information to you.
Can
Okay,
you
thank you,
all
ma'am.
do a private chat? Please do a private chat.
Private chat.
Sure.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, Sajatha? Sajatha?
I was just going to say that if you're going to pursue that regarding putting it on Naviance, and Lenore, maybe you have heard something that I haven't. There, Dr. Reed has said that they weren't, that because it was a race-based scholarship, they, not to me, that they couldn't do, this was based on some stuff that happened last year at school board changing their guidance, but then she had told me that they were going to remove that was no longer the case, that they were definitely going to allow people to advertise race-specific scholarships. But then she told Nikki this. I believe she told our president this at an event, that they weren't allowed to do this. But at our education committee meeting, one of our members went on to Naviance and she saw a couple of scholarships, one for the Asian kids, one for Hispanic students. And so I'm like a little bit perplexed. So I would love to hear if you're able to get that onto Naviance. Is that what you were talking about, Lenore, on Naviance?
It was, yes.
Yeah, so I would be, I mean, there are other scholarships that are race-based, but she did tell President Zimmerman that wasn't
I don't know
okay.
what she said. I don't know. I can't remember what she said.
Oh, yeah, so you told me right after
Yeah,
you
I
talked. So
did.
I remember what she said. You told me
Okay.
right after you talked to her. So
Maybe I don't know.
maybe
I
you
can't
can just get it
remember.
in there, because I think that it should be on there.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, nothing else. Um, uh, housing. Housing.
Okay, here I am. I don't know, can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. So April is Fair Housing Month. And we're going to have a speaker at the April NAACP general meeting. We're going to have a fair housing speaker from the Equal Rights Commission. It's Susan McClanahan. And she's very good. Her organization does the paired testing that you hear about sometimes, where they'll send in a Black couple and a white couple and see if they get treated differently. So she's going to talk about that. Yes, they do. And come on to the general meeting in April to find out more about that. Also, the fair housing has been targeted as one of the budget cuts by the current administration. They have lost money. About 66 fair housing organizations around the country have lost money, and they're suing the administration. I wouldn't be surprised if Fairfax County loses some money for fair housing as well. Okay, April 26th, Nikki mentioned the Black Homeownership Forum. We're going to have a panel of speakers talking about finding a house from a Black realtor's point of view in Fairfax County. We've got a guy from the county who runs a below market affordable housing program for people who qualify financially. And he's also going to talk about how to get your finances in order to get a first-time mortgage. We'll also have another person from the Equal Rights Center talking about discrimination in mortgage lending. In April, also, we're organizing people on 2 issues. One is for the budget hearing. We always organize a group of people to go and advocate for affordable housing. We need a lot more money in affordable housing to build the amount that's needed. We're way, way, way short of it. The Board of Supervisors has a goal of 10,000 new affordable housing units by 2034. And the funding is lagging on that. So we go every year to encourage them to put in more money. The other thing we're organizing around is that even when they do get the money and try to build affordable housing, there's often a very loud group of NIMBYs in the neighborhood, people who say, not in my backyard, not building that here. And there's two planning hearings going on right now. One was last night, an initial hearing. It's a church that wants to build some affordable housing for seniors in Sully. And about 300 people showed up at this hearing, and most of them were against that. And they were very shocked that anyone would think of putting any kind of affordable housing in their neighborhood. Another one is the Franconia Government Center is going to move to Kingstown, and the old building will be torn down, and it's proposed to put up some affordable housing there for families and workforce housing. And there's a group of there's over 100 people testifying at the committee, the planning committee hearing for that, and quite a few of them are against it, not for any good reason except that they don't want that in their neighborhood. So if you think that's over, it's not. Let's see, what's this? Oh yeah, and today we've noticed in the budget that they've cut 60 what is it less 660,000 600,000 6 million, about a third of the cuts they've made to the budget, which is substantial this year, has come out of departments that serve the most needy people, disabled people, children, seniors, people who are homeless, almost homeless. A lot of that money got taken out of 3 departments that service those people. And there's a concern that that will result in more homelessness over the coming summer. Homeless people are coming out of their hypothermia shelters on March 31st. All over the county, the shelters in the morning on the April 1st. It's kind of a bad April Fool's joke. They shake their hands. They say, it's been good to have you. They give them a sleeping bag and a tent. And they go out the door and try to find a place to pitch their tent for the summer. However, if they all pitch the tents together, the county may come along and clear out their tent colonies. And that happened twice last summer. NAACP offered a set of guidelines for camp clearing to the county. And just today, they reported out on which ones of them they will do and which ones they won't. And it was a very long discussion. They really talked about this a lot. They didn't take all of our guidelines. But I'm glad that we've got them focused on it just a few weeks before the homeless people go out. By the way, the homeless people are over 50% Black and people of color, whereas only less than 10% of the population of Fairfax County is Black. And there's a lot of people who are homeless who got on a slide either through tangling with the criminal justice system and that's spilling over into not being able to get a job or rent an apartment or one thing or another. So there's a lot of relations to fair housing and just housing in the homeless population. Okay, I guess that's about it. That's April. We're real busy and we hope you can come and help. If you want to help, if you want to testify or write testimony, we can set you up with a video. You can do video testimony. Just give me a shout out at housing@fairfaxnaacp.org. housing.fairfaxnaacp.org.
Thank you, Mary. Diana, you had a question?
Yeah, Mary, I just wondered where in the Sully district are they doing the hoping to build affordable housing? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, it's a place called Franklin Farms. It used to be a big subdivision.
Franklin Farms. Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. And lastly, we will have Freedom Fund.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Freedom Fund is currently set for October 25th, but due to a conflict with NAACP conference, we're going to have to find another date. But we have the budget allocated. We have the place, which would be at the Tyson's Marriott in Tyson's, Virginia. So just hang tight. We are in the process of coming up with a new date that will not interfere with a lot of the activities that are currently going on. And then finally, I wanted to share that NAACP will have the Women in NAACP breakfast on March 28th at the Riverview in Occoquan. It's going to be beautiful. The keynote speaker is Jessica Berg. She is an educator in Fairfax County, and she has a book on women and gender studies that is from 8:30 to 10:30. Unfortunately, fortunately, NAACP is co-sponsoring the event, but unfortunately, we are at our max as far as the number of people who can attend from NAACP. But I assure you, if there's anything that I can share next month about the event, I will definitely bring that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Diana, put your hand down. Are there any committees that I've overlooked? Hearing none. Next slide, please. Okay, without further ado, we have our membership committee co-chair / member at large, Jasmine Carr, who will be interviewing her grandmother, Miss Carolyn Williamson Green, who was the caregiver to Queen Mother Rosa Parks. So without further ado, I'm going to get my popcorn and I'm going to enjoy this. Jasmine, you're up. Take it away.
Hey, and actually, I need to backtrack a little bit and give the membership update. We have our kickoff for the Divine Nine Challenge coming up in April. And so we're doing outreach to all of the historically Black fraternities and sororities that serve Northern Virginia. The competition ends in July. So whoever signs up the most new applications will win a $500 scholarship, and they can decide what they want the programming to be for that. As well as attend a scholarship ceremony. We still need to plan that, and they will be highlighted in our newsletter. So that is our update for membership. So with that, before I got started, I'd like to also thank President Zimmerman and the XCOM committee for allowing us to come and share some of these memories. We're really excited about this. You know, at a time where history is being erased, Black history, which is American history, I feel like storytelling and oral history is even more important in these times to share. So next slide, please. Well, most of you all already know me, so I will not introduce myself, but I will introduce the woman of the hour. And unfortunately, you can't see that we're wearing matching sweatshirts. That was her idea. This is my grandmother, Carolyn Williamson Green. She is the cousin and caregiver of Rosa Parks. She also co-founded the well-known Detroit organization, Community United for Progress, and they work to improve the conditions of senior citizens as well as the youth in the city of Detroit. She has starred in several documentaries. The first is the Academy Award nominated and Daytime Emmy winner documentary Mighty Times, The Legacy of Rosa Parks. I was also featured in that documentary alongside my two cousins, Donnell and Dante Green, and Dante is actually on the call tonight. The second is My Life with Rosie, a bond between cousins, and this documentary is entirely about her relationship with Rosa. My cousin's wife, Dr. Angela Williamson, produced it and did an amazing job. She also wrote the children's book, My Life with Rosie, to go along with the documentary. It was an Amazon bestseller, even though I know we're not going to Amazon right now. But it was also voted the best book to expose children to the civil rights movement in Mothering Magazine. And then last but not least, she starred in The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks. That was featured at the Tribeca Film Festival. And due to her work in community service and the civil rights movement. She's been the recipient of many awards, including the City of Detroit and Wayne County Lifetime of Service Awards, and she was also awarded by the City of Los Angeles for her community service. And these are some of the covers of all of the documentaries. Next slide, please. Okay, now first, I'd just like to give everyone an overview of some of Rosa's family origins. In between the slides, I'll be asking my grandmother some interview questions, and I'm also providing here some direct quotations from Rosa over the years. So just for clarity purposes, we are related to Rosa through our maternal lineage, which is the Edwards family. And her great-grandfather was James Percival. He was an indentured Scots-Irish servant who married Mary Jane Nobles, an enslaved African. So their daughter Rose wed Sylvester Edwards, and they had 3 daughters, Fanny, who is my great-great-grandmother, Bessie, and Rose's mother Leona, and 1 brother, Sonny. So she was actually named after her mother's mother and her father's mother, Louise. And to the right, we have some photos here. At the top left is Rosa's father, James Macaulay. To the right is Leona Edwards Macaulay, her mother. To the left bottom is Sylvester Edwards. And to the right is Rosa's only brother, Sylvester Macaulay. So these are from Rosa's words. Deserted by my father at 2.5 years, shortly before brother's birth. Mother was with her semi-invalid parents. Great-grandfathers playing with my brother and me. He was an ex-slave of Scotch-Irish descent, African ancestry, either remote or non-existent. He died when I was 6 years old. My mother came back to the rural part of Montgomery County, Pine Level, Alabama, to live with her parents, my grandmother and grandfather. This is when my brother was born. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll get into a little more of Rosa's childhood, which was not all peaches and creams. They were very, very rough growing up in Alabama during those times. To the right is her mother, Leona, and cousin Beatrice. You'll also see throughout this presentation many photos that are, personal to us, but that are also in the Library of Congress. So this is another direct quote. Mother taught school in the rural community where we lived. KKK moved through the county, burning Negro churches, schools, flogging and killing. Grandfather stayed up to wait for them to come to our house. He kept his shotgun within reach at all times. My aunt, a widow, my great-great-grandmother Fanny, and her 5 small children, one of which is my great-grandfather, Thomas Williamson, came to our house at night. We cannot undress and go to bed at night. The doors and windows were boarded and nailed tight from the inside. I stayed awake many nights keeping vigil with Grandpa. I wanted to see him kill a Ku Kluxer. He declared the first to invade our home would surely die. This is when I was 6 or 7, and none came into our house. So this is my first question for you, Grandma. How would you describe Rosa?
Well, she didn't plan to be a civil rights activist. It came on her by accident. It was an accident. She was quiet, and everything she did for her people. She was just an awesome lady. She was quiet, and she wasn't just a civil rights activist. She was also a wife, daughter, sister, aunt, cousin. She was many, and she had a lot of friends. So she was many things. She was quiet in nature, but she would always let you know if she didn't agree with you. She would do about her body language wouldn't change and her voice would never go up.
The minister, committees and appointing all the members.
But you knew that she didn't agree with you. She was a avid reader. And a lot of people don't know she was also a deaconess.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
And so she loved people, she adored children, and that's what I can say about Rosa Parks. Yes.
So why do you call her Rosie?
Well, me and my siblings called her Rosie. We couldn't say Rosa. My dad even called her Rosie, but my kids call her Auntie Rosie. My Aunt Ann's kids call her Auntie Rosie, but me and my siblings always called her Rosie. Yeah. So if you hear me say Rosie, that's what I've been calling her all my life.
Because I've been called a granddaughter, everything. I'm like, no, she didn't have any kids. So she is my cousin, but I hope this illustrates why we'll call her my great aunt. As you'll see in the further slides, she was raised with my grandfather like siblings.
Yes.
So with that, let's go to the next slide. Okay, now this is talking specifically to Rosa's adolescence with my great-great-grandmother Fanny. She actually lived with Fanny while attending the Montgomery Industrial School, where she received a scholarship. So this was at a pivotal time of her adolescence. We're talking here from 11 to almost out of high school. So that was a long period of time where she primarily stayed with my aunt. Not my aunt, I'm sorry, my great-great-grandmother. So here are some excerpts from another interview she did later in her life where she talks about her childhood. And the interviewer asked, did you live with relatives then or board? And Rosa said, I lived with my mother's sister most of the time and sometimes other people. I stayed once in a while with one of my mother's girlfriends, but most of the time I was with my mother's sister. And what was your aunt's name that you stayed with? Her name was Fanny Williamson. She was a widow. And to the right are some pictures of my great-great-grandmother. The one on the left is actually currently displayed at the King Museum. And the one on the right is also both are in Alabama, sometime between the 1920s to the 1930s. And this is in the Library of Congress. So, Grandma, I have another question.
Yeah.
What kind of woman was Fanny? I mean, we know she helped to shape Rosa's character. What did you hear about her from great-granddad?
Okay. Yes, because she died when I was a baby. So everything I heard was through my siblings and my aunts and my dad. And from what I've been told, she adored her grandchildren. She adored them. Her grandchildren was not going to regular school. They went to private school. And she was a classy woman, God-fearing, caregiver, compassionate. She took care of her sister. She loved people. And she wanted to make sure her sister and her sister's children was okay. So the whole family was a close-knit family. So they took care of one another. So that's what I can say about Grandma Fanny.
Now, how did great-granddad describe his childhood in Alabama during that time?
My dad?
Yeah.
Like it was burning and raping, and all that was there, but they was a close-knit family and they had each other and they knew they had each other. So that's the only thing I know about his childhood. And I know how they would go to their granddad's house. They would walk there and most men would only take the men fishing.
Right.
But their grandfather took everybody fishing who wanted to go. And it was the story about who was going to catch, they would be laughing and talking. They was little kids,
Right.
who was going to catch the biggest fish. But I never found out who caught the biggest fish. Rosie said she did, and Dad always said he did. So I never found out about that.
I love that actually, because if you all will begin to see how much of a feminist Rosa was for that time, in her narratives that she's written and many of her interviews, even though she seemed kind of meek, she was anything but traditional. We'll go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit more about Rosa and the Williamsons. Now, this is another direct quote from Rosa because she, Fanny, was so ill, she would take me along with her children to the place where she worked and, help her to do some of the work that she couldn't do, cleaning and doing dishes and so on. And we did a great deal of work under her supervision. It was a job. Now, as I said before, Rosa and Fanny's children, including my great-grandfather, they grew up together in the same household for many years. And so their relationship was more like siblings than cousins. And there's some pictures of them on the right. To the left is my great-grandfather, Thomas Williamson, his brother Howard, and below his sister, Annie Mae Cruz. I'm going to let my grandma tell a story about what's mentioned below, about a really scary night that Rosa and her mother, Leona, witnessed, and it had something to do with my great-grandfather and his brother. If you don't mind telling us about that.
Oh yes, Rosie told me about the story. She said that my uncle Howard, my father's brother, he had beat up a white boy. He was 15 at the time, and I guess when he came home and told his mom, my grandmother, they knew they had to get him out of town. They got him out of town, but the mob came and they was gonna hang my dad. And Rosie said all the girls and everybody was praying. And then the white boy who got beat up came and said, "Oh no, that's not the one," like that. So they let my father alone. But Howard was probably in Ohio by then because they got him out right away. They put him on the train and he got out right away. Yeah.
And hey, if that would have happened to my great-grandfather, we wouldn't be here. Yeah, we wouldn't be here.
No, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Next slide, please. And now we're going to get into what everyone knows Rosa for, her activism. And before I get into that, there's a picture to the right, and this is actually at an NAACP branch meeting in Montgomery. And the man to her left is actually her husband, Raymond Parks. A lot of people have never seen him before, but he was one of the main people who got her into activism. She's quoted as saying he was the first real activist I ever met. And through this empowerment with the relationship and just everything she had experienced that we've discussed and just the rough times in Alabama at that time, she was civically minded. And so she discovered women could even be a part of the NAACP through a flyer she saw in another branch out of the state. And so she came to the meeting at the Montgomery branch on election day, where she was elected secretary on the spot and was the only woman at that time. So over the next 10 years where she joined the branch, she collaborated with E.D. Nixon, who was a very militant union organizer. And so they wanted to transform the branch into a more activist organization, really focused on criminal justice. So this is a quote from Nixon, who was the president. Her mother, Leona, warned that the white folks would lynch us, both her and me. Mrs. Parks and I were a part of the NAACP at a time when other African Americans were hesitant to associate with us. He's also been quoted as saying, whenever there was an issue with a Black person in Montgomery, they would say, "Go to Rosa, she'll help you." So over time, eventually they were both elected to lead the Alabama State Conference. For those who aren't aware of the structure of the organization, the local branches deal with local issues. So the state conference deals with the entire state. And you can see they pretty much, led the entire state at one point. Also, she worked on some pretty high profile cases advocating for Reese Taylor and Gertrude Perkins. These were two Black women that were sexually assaulted by white men and did not receive justice, and she diligently worked on those cases. I do have a question for you, Grandma, from here.
Okay.
So what role did Rosa's faith, you think, play in her activism?
It played a big role in her activism. Because before she would do anything, she would always go to God first. She would always go to God first. And before any decision be made, she prayed about it. And that's why she didn't get up off the bus. She just sat there. And if she hadn't, we wouldn't be here today. But God is the one told her to do that.
Yes,
believe.
definitely, definitely. All right, next slide, please. Okay, now this is the meat and potatoes of her activism. This is when the boycott began, or right before the boycott began. A lot of people do not realize that Rosa was a trained activist. I'm sure most of us here were learned, we know the history, we're aware of this. But so many people in the general public have no idea that she was trained for many years in advocacy. So, what actually helped to give her some inspiration was her time at the Highlander Folk School, where this was a training center for labor and civil rights activists all over the country. And Septima Clark, the well known South Carolina activist educator, led this 2-week workshop for her, and she actually mentored Rosa. And this was right before the Montgomery bus boycott began. So, as most people know in the history, on December 1st, 1955, she was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama, for disorderly conduct for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man. On February 21st, 1956, a Montgomery grand jury indicted Rosa, Martin Luther King Jr., and the president of the branch, Edie Nixon, and 86 other bus boycott participants for violating the Alabama Anti-Boycott Act of 1921. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is Women's History Month. And, you know, what people need to understand, and Rosa never shied away from this, but unfortunately, these stories were never told. Boycotts were happening all over the country, you know, decades before Rosa did what she did. So this was not in a bubble. And I feel like it's our duty as relatives to also make sure that these women who also did the same thing, who also were so brave and courageous, receive the credit that they deserve, and that history in a lot of these cases never gave them. So I'm going to go over 4 women, well, actually 8 women, that I consider pioneers of the movement. So first, I'd like to talk about Viola White. At age 35, she was arrested and assaulted in 1944 for not relinquishing her seat. And actually, Rosa was very inspired by this. Above, pictured from left to right, is Marianne Musgrove, Ruth Powell, Ruby O'Hara, and Ruth Ann Robinson. And this is actually a local story for those who are not aware. These 4 women, they're from Howard University, and they stood against Virginia's Jim Crow laws by refusing to sit at the back of a public bus. And this happened 11 years prior to Rosa's action. And I was really honored to be one of the speakers at Meadowlark Botanical Gardens in early February. They unveiled a sign giving these women their flowers, which is so deserved, in conjunction with Nova Parks as well. Next slide, please. Okay, more pioneers of the movement. To the right, Sarah Mae Fleming. Fleming was an activist who was forcibly removed from the bus in Columbia, South Carolina. This is 17 months before Rosa did what she did in 1955. And her case is so important because it actually set the bar, was pivotal for the Parks case legally. And I need to give one of our other members some shine here because she let me know that this is her aunt, our chair for communications, Michelle Pulliam. I was so grateful that she shared this story with me. And in South Carolina, there's even a day dedicated to her. So I felt like it was so important to make sure that she gets this acknowledgement. And a lot of people know the brave young woman to the left, Claudette Colvin. On March 2nd, 1955, she was only 15, and she was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama, for refusing to yield her seat to a white woman. Yes, Michelle. And a lot of people don't realize that Rosa and Claudette, they knew each other. They had a relationship. In fact, Rosa tried to get Claudette to maintain her membership in the branch, which was difficult. People didn't have vehicles. She was in the youth council, and she saw leadership quality in Claudette. And Claudette has been quoted as saying, well, Rosa was one of the few people who kept in touch with me. So these are all just very brave, special women, and I wanted to make sure that their stories were heard. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is kind of controversial, but we're going to tackle it. Respectability politics and the role of women in the civil rights movement. Now, as you've heard from the history we've shared, Rosa's childhood was no means an easy one. And even though she was very fair, she was still the target of violence and oppression. But we have to keep in mind respectability politics because it's in play then and it's still in play now. Rosa's image was digestible to the public. And the civil rights movement at that time needed a role model. They needed someone who could not be discredited in any way. And so, respectability politics, I'll break it down. Um, in quote, to achieve Black uplift, many leaders and activists promoted middle class values such as traditional gender roles, diligence, thriftiness, cleanliness, and moderate religious practices. Rosa was respected by both the working class and the middle class. And this is not, of course, to take away anything because she was trained for many years, risking her life on the line for her work. But we know that she had a digestible persona. She came across as meek, even though we know that is not true. She supported Marcus Garvey's, teachings, which a lot of people don't know. And her militant views even put her at odds with other civil rights leaders, especially further in the movement. So this meek and, mild woman was just an exterior. But, you can't argue with the fact that appearances matter and respectability politics are still happening to this day. When you think about a Michael Brown, a George Floyd, a Trayvon Martin, the first tactic is to take away their humanity whenever something happens. So this is still at play today. And Claudette Colvin actually said, later, I had a child born out of wedlock. I became pregnant at 16. I didn't fit the image of someone they wanted to showcase. And I hope we can continue to learn from these instances. And it's not, again, taking anything away because she was trained for that moment. She was prepared for the boycott moment. But this is something that exists, and we would be remiss to not touch on it. Women as well were excluded from national leadership in the civil rights movement despite their efforts in mobilizing support. And I always say the first lessons that people receive are in the home from their mothers. So they had long range influence, but they were not given these leadership positions. And this was actually found in Rosa's notes. Women, 1/2 the world population, 2/3 work done by women, 1/10 income, less than 1/100th power. And Grandma, for you, I do have a question. What do people get wrong about Rosa?
Well, they say she was tired, her feet was tired, but that wasn't true. Her soul was tired. She was tired of her people being treated the way they was being treated. Back then it was the hanging and the beating and the raping, all that. She was tired of it. And another thing they get wrong is that her face was the face of the movement because of her color. And that's not true. Because she was fair-skinned. But that wasn't true either. God chose her, period.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to get into the move to Detroit. We'll explain what was happening in Alabama and why she had to actually make that move. So due to her participation in the boycott, she lost her job. Her husband lost his job. Their house was burned down. Her mother even lost her job, I'd heard. So basically anyone around her was targeted, constant death threats, not able to find any kind of employment. And when you have such a high profile like that, you can't hide anywhere, especially in the Deep South where everyone knows everyone. So in 1957, Rosa and her mother Leona first came up to Detroit, and soon after her husband Raymond came. And unfortunately, Raymond passed before I was born, so I never got to meet him. But to the left is actually a receipt, And this is in the Library of Congress, and it's special because it lists that my great-grandfather wired $300 and the Montgomery Improvement Association collected $800 to help cover her moving expenses. And Grandma.
Yes.
So this is a good story. You were there when the call came that night
Yes.
to let you know that she had to get out of Alabama. Can you tell them about that?
Yes, I was laying on the floor reading a book, and Aunt Ann called. I answered the phone, and she asked me, she says, Thomas? No, she said, is Thomas home? I said, yes. I said, but he's asleep, Aunt Ann. She said, well, tell him to get up. It's family business. So I went in, I got him up, and he came, and I heard him say, I'll go to the bank tomorrow. We'll get him out of there.
So how do you think the economic situation was for her and her husband when they moved to Detroit?
Well, when Rosie, right after then, Rosie and Aunt Lee came, and that's Rosie's mother. We call her Aunt Lee, and they stayed with us a couple of weeks. I guess Dad and my Aunt Ann and my Aunt Henny Mae probably helped them find a place. Then Parks came, so for them it was probably like everybody else who came south. From the South. They stayed with families a couple of weeks or so, and then they got their own place. But they didn't have no problems because our family was gonna make sure they had something to eat and they had somewhere to sleep because they was a close-knit family and they took care of one another.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, now before we go forward, I just wanted to show you all some never before seen family photos. Rosa was a staple at all of our family events, weddings, graduation parties, retirement parties, funerals. I mean, everything. She traveled to see everyone. She loved her family and was extremely active. So we just wanted to share some of these. And I saw from the list that quite a few people in these photos are actually on the call tonight. So thank you all for coming to support us. To the left, I'll just kind of make a quick description, is myself, my cousin, Dante and Donnell Green, and Rosa. And this actually was from the cover of The Mighty Times, The Legacy of Rosa Parks video, the documentary rather. And then to the right is Rosa, my cousin Sandra and James Cruz, and Grandma. And this was at my cousin Eric's wedding. And then further to the right is my mom. Hi, Mom. And Rosa. And then furthest to the right is Uncle Thomas in the left and my Aunt Barbara in the back and Rosa in the front. And this was taken in Los Angeles. To the left bottom is my Aunt Barbara. I know she's on the call. And Rosa, and this was in our house in LA. In the middle is my Aunt Alice, who I also saw was on, Grandma and Rosa. And to the right is my Uncle Dale, Rosa, and Grandma, and actually in the house that we're in now. Next slide, please. Okay, the Rosa Parks story. This is when you got your acting debut. But the Rosa Parks story was featured on CBS in 2002. It was a biography about her life, and that starred Angela Bassett, Peter Francis James, and the late Cicely Tyson. And you see my grandma there, pictured with Angela Bassett, but she was actually the familiar advisor and consultant for this movie. So can you let them know why you were picked to be the advisor?
Well, Rosa Parks, when the studio called that morning, Rosa Parks had told them, gave her thing. She wasn't able to go, and she told them I would know more about her. Call me, and that's when they asked me, did I have any grandchildren who could be a part of it? And that's when I got you. I I got you. But both of them happened the same day. Yes, but Rosa Parks told them.
And I have a quick story about Mighty Times, the legacy of Rosa Parks. So it was created in a series called Teaching Tolerance. So this went out to all the schools in conjunction with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I was in high school, and we had talked about Rosa a lot growing up. So I didn't think it was going to be as big as it was, and I didn't tell anybody at school. So we're sitting down and they play it, and I'm in the back like, oh, I know what's coming. And they're like, wait, Jasmine? And they ended up showing it to everybody in the school, which, was almost mortifying for a really reserved person like me. But no, I was very honored. I was very honored. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to start to talk about how my grandmother became Rosa's caregiver. Now, these are pictures that a lot of people haven't seen. These were, she got older, toward the end of life, and you can tell that at that point she had become frail and, really did need more medical support. So, if you don't mind, how did you end up becoming her caregiver?
Well, I was getting ready to retire. I was a troubleshooter for GM. And one of my girlfriends who was giving the party said, I know how we can have a real nice party if your aunt come. I don't care how many times I say cousin. They say aunt. So I told her, I said, well, I could call her and see will she be able to come. I say, but you know how they go, Faye. I say she might wake up and don't feel good. So when I got home, I called Rosie and she said, oh yeah, I'll definitely come. I said, well, Loretta, that's my sister. I say she would pick you up. So the next day when I got to work, I went to medical and asked for a wheelchair because I knew it would be too long for her to walk from the parking lot all the way to where the party was. And so I was telling her, she said, well, who is it for? And I said, Rosa Parks. She said, the Rosa Parks? And I told the nurse, yes, that Rosa Parks. She said, well, she'll get a wheelchair, but she's going to have her own private nurse while she's there. And so we was leaving the retirement party. And she said, well, since you retired, now you can come check on me. I said, okay, I will. Well, my sister Barbara had flew in from California for my retirement party, and we went to see her. So while I was down there, she said, well, when are you going to start coming? And I said, well, I come once a week. So I came once a week, and then she fell and broke her leg, and I had to go to the hospital and everything. And then I started coming more. I had to go every day when she got out the hospital. And the more I went, the older she got, and the more a need for me to be there. So that's how I became her caregiver.
So why do you think you all had a special bond?
Well, I don't know. Really, I mean, it might be because she always said I look like Aunt Fan. And that was her cousin sister. And then I don't know, when she would go out of town, she just would call and let me know where she was going. If I couldn't get in touch with her, who I could call to get in touch with if anything ever happened. But then my son, my youngest son, Dale, was born December the 1st, and she would always write him all the time when he was in school, trying to motivate
the boycott,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, motivate him. And so I don't know if it was one of them 3 reasons or what, but she just chose me for these things.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is another rare photo. Now, this is one of the last photos that we took with her together as a family. This was her 90th birthday celebration, as well as a family reunion celebration. And I was actually the mistress of ceremonies. I was in the back, and I look a little different than I do now. But this is one of the last times that we were able to be with her together. So I just felt like this was a great photo to see the family as well. Next slide, please. Okay, now just a few years later, she passed away, October 24th, 2005. Her funeral was in Detroit, the place she had made her home. and later she lay in honor in the United States Capitol Rotunda. I remember being at the funeral in the procession, and I had never seen anything like that. I mean, crowds of people for as far as you can see, all the way down 7 Mile. If you're a Detroiter, you know what I'm talking about when I say 7 Mile. I mean, I've never seen anything like that to this day. But you do have a special story. If you don't mind sharing it, you were with her when she passed. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, okay. I get a call that morning when they asked me, they wanted me to come down there. She wasn't herself. So they said, when you drop the kids off, because I was taking the grandkids to school, and would you come down here? So I went down, and so I talked to her, and she seemed to be perking back up. And I read scripture like we always do, read, because she was an avid reader, you know. And so I would read to her and different scriptures and everything. So she seemed to be pretty good. So when the children got out of school, I went to pick them up, came home. I get another call about 5 o'clock. She's not doing good. So I go back down there, and I was holding her hand, and there was a holistic doctor there. I was holding her hand, and we was talking, and I was reading scripture to her again, because she loved to read scriptures. And all of a sudden, her hand kind of left mine. And the next thing I knew, I called her, say, she's still, you know. And when the holistic died, she said, she's passed. And so the only thing that really helped me, I kept saying in my mind, once she told me, people don't like to die alone. And I kept putting that in my mind. She didn't. Yeah.
And I'm glad you were there for her. Yeah. Next slide, please. And this go ahead, Grandma. Sorry.
Oh, and the funeral, not only there, we went to Alabama, Washington, and then it came here.
Okay.
Yeah, we had speakers at all of it, and like the streets was in Detroit. They was everywhere we went. When we got to the airport, the people was lined up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even in here at the airport, Alabama, and when we left Alabama, it was Southwest Airlines gave us the plane, and it was I think the first 2 black pilots flew the plane. All this was
wow.
everybody volunteered. And when they left, they did the wings over Alabama. So it was kind of touching. Yeah.
Now the last one is a video. I am trying to see if it's gonna play. Okay, perfect. So before you play it, now this was my cousin Dante Green. He's on the call. And he was the youngest person to speak at the funeral, which was full of, dignitaries, politicians, other civil rights leaders, celebrities. He was incredibly brave. And I wanted to close it out with this because, when you don't have children, people tend to think that you don't have a legacy, that there's no future generation that you influenced. And that's not the case. And I think the words that he spoke at the funeral really show what she means to us and the next generation in her family, and the legacy I think she would want all children who she loved to know about her. So if you don't mind playing that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dante Green, and I'm representing the Edward family. I would like to start off about talking about what she did for the children. We all know that she didn't have any children, but she loved them, and they loved her too. Every time a child would come around, she would have a big smile on her face, happy to see them. She would have a big smile on her face, happy to see them. She had her own institution called the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development and a program called Pathway to Freedom. Rosa Parks has inspired many people and will inspire many more. She has showed us that you can win in this victorious war called life. She has taught me that don't take no stuff from nobody. Thanks to Rosa Parks' courageous action and the Montgomery citizens who worked together, they made a bus boycott and the buses were desecrated. The buses didn't have any customers because all of the Montgomery citizens would not get on the bus to work. They will walk or catch a ride from other cars. Rosa Parks, being around her was like being around an angel. So sweet and so soft and so quiet. She had like a quiet strength. She was quiet but strong, a strong black woman. And I will miss her dearly. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. That closes it out. We really appreciate you hearing our stories. I'm so happy to share this with you all. I always say this is the hardest working branch ever, just full of dedicated and passionate people. So I'm proud to be a part of the branch. If you live and work in Fairfax County and you're not a member, please consider joining. And with that, we'll close it out. Thanks, everyone.
Hello. Miss Lenore, can you change this? I don't even see myself. But anyway, Jasmine, do you think your grandmother can, Ms. Williamson, do you think you can answer maybe 2 or 3 questions from the audience?
Yes.
Okay, less.
Okay.
And then 2 more, and then that we have to go.
Okay, I'll be brief. First of all, thank you both. You know, for many of us, certain age, and Ms. Parks is a symbol of the civil rights movement. But this kind of, you know, oral history here just puts such a human touch on it that, you know, I'm very touched by. And I wanted to, you know, I appreciate learning about her. And what I really appreciate, Jasmine, is how you gave the other people their flowers. Because I wasn't going to say anything, but I wasn't sure whether you were going to mention Claudette Colvin. But, you know, I really respect you all for doing that, because there were so many other Black women, you know, as part of the resistance or the civil rights movement at that time that, you know, history has never recognized. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I always do, you know, every time I've been asked to speak, I make sure, especially Claudette, because she's the most known, that she also is acknowledged. That's very important.
Any more questions or comments?
This is Lenore.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say my favorite part is seeing the love that your grandmother has for you on her face when you talk. It is really just wonderful to see.
Uh-oh, what just happened?
I froze them up. Here she is.
Yeah, they froze.
Is it back? Okay, yeah, it's back. Let's see.
Jasmine, y'all froze.
They're unfrozen now. Well, thank you. This was so exciting. I've learned so much. Ms. Williamson, thank you for sharing your granddaughter with us and your stories. Jasmine is absolutely phenomenal. You should just be proud. You will be in awe of her if you saw her, the work that she does for the community, the work that she does just for her sorority, for, you know, she's just a jack of all trades, master at all. She's a woman of many hats, and that's a testament to what you instill in her and her parents, as well as what she bear witnessed watching Queen Mother Rosa Parks, because she is really carrying that torch. So you all should just be very, very proud of the woman that she is, and the woman that we get to see all the time. So thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you so much, Queen Mother. And that would conclude our general membership meeting for March and our Women's Day, our Women's History Month. Again, thank you. Ms. Lenora, you can stop recording.